Imagine if a whole new country popped up tomorrow, just out of nowhere, a whole population emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. It sounds like a big problem, right? Well, something like that could happen over the next 80 years as permafrost melts. Now, unless you live up north, you might not think a lot about that thick layer of frozen earth covering close to half of Canada, but it's really important to a lot of people. And as a meteorologist who did live up north, I've been fascinated by it. Now, new research shows the melting permafrost will have a huge impact, and not just north of 60. Permafrost is a thick layer of earth that remains frozen year-round, and in Canada, we have a lot of it. It holds massive amounts of carbon and microorganisms. Now, Canada is the second largest permafrost country in the world. In the northern prairies and the southern territories, it begins around a meter below the surface and reaches depths of about 15 meters. But as you head north, some areas see permafrost to depths of 700 meters or more. Now, every summer, the layer of soil on top of that permafrost will thaw, allowing vegetation to grow, and then will freeze again in the winter. But with climate change, that thawing layer is getting deeper. And that creates a whole host of problems. The permafrost melting has a huge impact on the entire world, and that's because of what's inside of it: carbon.
At current, there is probably almost twice as much carbon in permafrost ground as there is carbon in the atmosphere as carbon dioxide.
You heard that right. Twice as much carbon in the ice as there is CO2 in the atmosphere. Permafrost is full of undecomposed plant matter that has been accumulating for thousands of years. And when it melts, that carbon in the ice becomes carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere. David Olefelt says in the future, our permafrost emissions will likely be bigger than our fossil fuel emissions in Canada. But just how much depends on how much the planet warms. Based on the study, future emissions by the end of the century range from 55 billion tons of carbon in CO2 equivalents to 232 billion tons, depending on how much we're able to reduce emissions in coming years. But let's put those numbers in perspective. This is how much carbon Russia, the US, and China would release by the end of the century based on how much they released in 2019. Compared to the permafrost melting, it's like adding another country to the mix.
So it's like you would add another, European Union, for example, from now until year 2100 at the emission rate today.
And it's a cycle too. The more greenhouse gases we emit, the warmer the planet becomes, the more permafrost melts, which adds more greenhouse gases, and on and on. That's why Olefelt says reducing emissions is crucial.
Any reduction we do in emissions in slowing down climate warming means that we're going to release less greenhouse gases from the Arctic.
So where do we go from here? The study sounds pretty scary, but Olefelt says permafrost melt won't be responsible for runaway climate change. It's an accelerator, more fuel to the fire.
At the same time, we're quite certain now that it's not something that's so small that we don't have to worry about it, right?
And finding out exactly how much emissions we're talking about will take more research because with science, there's always that degree of uncertainty. But one thing is for sure, the permafrost is already changing, and that has huge implications for all of the people who live on top of it. Entire communities are built on the permafrost. Those homes, buildings, roads, and bridges are all at risk as permafrost thaws and the ground shifts.
If people are going to live in an area where their houses are under threat because their houses are sinking in one area, one side of the house is sinking, the other side is not, or if the sewage pipes in their village are going to be broken because the permafrost thaws underneath the sewage pipe, or if the power poles tilt over because of melting permafrost, then this is something for everybody to be concerned about.
So definitely a problem that Northerners are already facing, and as emissions increase from the Arctic, it'll be something for us all to think about.